Do you have anything left from yesterday? Just enough to make her smile today?
On a warm, bright afternoon when sunlight spilled across the streets like liquid gold, a small bakery on Riverside Avenue filled with the scent of fresh bread, sweet pastries, and warm memories waiting to be made. But amid all that warmth, a quiet storm of desperation stood at the door. A thin, exhausted woman named Marissa stepped inside with dirt smudged on her clothes and worry carved into every line on her face. At her side stood her little daughter, Flora, whose wide eyes, though tired, still carried a faint glimmer of hope. The mother's shoulders trembled as she gathered the courage to speak, because she had not eaten since yesterday, and Flora's last meal had been a shared apple pitifully divided between them. She didn't come to buy anything, she had only come to beg for something others threw away without a second thought. Inside the bakery, everything felt painfully luxurious to Marissa, rows of fresh loaves stacked neatly, pastries glazed like jewels, cakes decorated as if for royalty. She lowered her gaze to avoid the stares she feared would burn holes into her dignity. Flora clung to her sleeve, her small fingers trembling. The mother approached the counter with hesitant steps, the floor almost feeling too polished for dusty shoes like hers. The employees looked up, their polite smiles fading slightly, unsure of what to expect. Marissa's voice shook as she asked them if they had any expired cake, something thrown out at the end of the day, something, anything, that she could give her daughter who hadn't had a treat in months. But what she didn't know was that someone else stood in the bakery, watching closely. A tall, well-dressed man named Roland Vance, one of the city's wealthiest entrepreneurs, was there quietly, dressed in a simple gray suit instead of his usual boardroom attire. He had stepped into the bakery to escape the noise of the world outside and to enjoy one of the peaceful routines he rarely admitted he needed. He had come for a slice of blueberry pie, but life had served him something far more important. As Marissa spoke those heartbreaking words, Roland felt something shift inside him. People often believed wealth turned hearts cold, but in his case, loss had already done that years ago. He had buried his wife and daughter after a tragic accident and locked his heart behind walls money couldn't fix. Yet here, in the soft daylight of a quiet bakery, a weary mother's trembling voice cracked open a corner of that broken heart. Marissa stood frozen as the workers awkwardly exchanged glances. They wanted to help, but their boss had strict rules against giving away food before closing. Her cheeks burned with shame as the silence thickened. She thought about turning back, escaping the embarrassment, pretending she hadn't asked. But hunger had a way of welding a person to hope, even when hope felt like a wound. Flora tugged gently at her sleeve, her eyes drifting toward a strawberry-topped cake behind the glass. She didn't ask for it. She wouldn't dare. Children like her learned early what dreams were allowed and which ones weren't. Roland noticed everything, the way the little girl hid behind her mother, the way Marissa tried so hard to stand tall despite the weight pushing her down. He could almost hear echoes of his own daughter in Flora's small hands and hopeful silence. Something inside him broke in the most human way possible. It wasn't pity. It wasn't charity. It was recognition, the recognition of suffering he knew too well. In that moment, he didn't see a homeless woman or a starving child. He saw two souls pushed into shadows by life's cruelty, standing in the doorway of a place filled with warmth they weren't sure they deserved. What happened next unfolded with the gentleness of daylight drifting through a window. Roland stepped forward, not announcing who he was, not waving around his wealth, not trying to attract attention. He walked quietly to the counter and asked the workers to pack the freshest cake in the display, the large vanilla sponge layered with berries, coated with cream, and decorated with fruits bursting with color. Then he asked for 2 warm meals, pastries, sandwiches, and anything he believed could restore life back into a hungry pair of eyes. Marissa watched in confusion, unsure why a stranger was making such a large order. When he turned to her, she braced herself for a lecture or judgment, her heart tightening like a fist. Instead, Roland simply placed the bag gently on the counter, nodding for the cashier to hand everything to her. His voice stayed calm and steady, thanking the staff and wishing them a good afternoon, as if his act of kindness was the most ordinary thing in the world. He didn't wait for applause. He didn't wait for gratitude. He simply took one step back and allowed Marissa to receive the kindness without pressure. But when her trembling hands reached for the bag, her eyes filled with disbelief, and she broke down in a way she'd been holding back for months. Flora's face lit up, not with greed, but with relief, an expression Roland had missed for years. The workers softened instantly, suddenly ashamed of the hesitation they had shown earlier. Kindness had entered the bakery disguised as a man in a simple suit, and everyone felt it. Roland walked toward the door, intending to leave quietly, but Marissa called out to him. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a soft, cracked whisper of thanks, one that carried more sincerity than any speech he'd ever heard in the business world. Roland turned, and for the first time in years, he smiled with the kind of warmth that touched memories instead of breaking them. He told her to take care, no names, no instructions, no conditions. Just humanity. As Roland stepped into the daylight outside, the sun seemed kinder, the wind gentler. He realized that the world still had room for healing, that helping someone else had stirred something alive inside him he thought was long gone. Marissa and Flora sat on a small bench outside the bakery, sharing cake with the joy of people who hadn't felt seen in too long. Their smiles, though quiet and tired, looked like the sunrise of a better day. And Roland understood that sometimes it wasn't grand gestures or millions of dollars that changed a life, it was one moment of compassion delivered at exactly the right time. If this story touched your heart, please make sure to like, comment, and share this video, and subscribe to Kindness Corner so we can continue spreading these powerful true-to-life stories. Before we end, tell us in the comments, do you believe small acts of kindness can change someone's entire life? And with that, the story closes on a warm afternoon where a simple question about an expired cake led to hope, healing, and a reminder that humanity still shines, especially in places where no one expects it.